So a while ago, I saw a post from Jim Lee, the current president of DC Comics, and said that manga has advantages over comics. And from there, it spawned a discourse between manga versus comics, and I didn't realize that people didn't mess with comics to this extent. So I wanted to give my reasons for why comics deserve respect. I do give it to the manga side on one thing: manga is definitely easier to get into. They're created and written by less people, so it's easier to keep track of. You don't have to worry about starting with a specific run, or which one to avoid, or which one is peak, etc. But I'd like to inform you, these are only for superhero comics. I don't know where people got the idea that superhero comics were the end-all be-all of comics. Like with manga, comics are another form of storytelling that branches beyond one genre. That's like saying that the only manga that matters is battle shonen manga. And about the comic run thing, that's mostly a DC and Marvel issue. They see the money with the cast they built, so they created multiple stories with a lot of retcons and whatnot because they know they will sell nonetheless, so the stories will never end. And if anything major happens with a hero, they can just say that it happened on another Earth. That's why I like Image Comics. Even if the stories are long and done by multiple people at times, there's still relatively a consistent timeline. And a quick reminder that a lot of popular and successful shows started from comics: Boondocks, Walking Dead, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Invincible, The Boys, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and DuckTales, for example. All of them started as comics. Even games too. Do you remember The Wolf Among Us? You guessed it, based off a comic too. And the game is a sort of prequel to the comic, and I definitely recommend you read it. Another source of the disrespect will be from the majority of anime fans, which leads into another reason on why the public trashes on comics so much. And obviously I don't mean all anime fans. I'm one too, but read comics first before I discovered manga. But from what I see, a good portion of the hate comes from a space that all my fellow nerds have gotten to at some point: power scaling. It's a dumb reason too, because what do you mean simple versus debates are part of the reason why people look down on comics. If you don't know what power scaling is, it's when you compare two characters, normally from two different series, and argue who would win. But like I said, with how DC and Marvel comics have multiple runs, there will be times when a character does something outrageous that is only a one-time thing or gets a one-time power-up, which someone might bring up in a power scaling argument. It normally goes down like this. Someone will make a post, let's say Gojo vs Spider-Man for example, then someone will bring up a feat that Spider-Man did one time, and finally someone will react to it by saying something like, "Oh, comics are always on BS." Granted, there are people on the comics side of the debate that are obnoxious with this to an insane degree, so I can't see some in retaliation of that. And then there's Death Battle, an animated power scaling channel that also stokes the fires a bit, since they do occasionally use multiple runs in their fights. Viewers get super enraged when an anime character loses to a comic character, and then people who watch reactions to a Death Battle will then go on the bandwagon on comics, only being used for power scaling fuel and nothing more. Especially when you have big content creators saying stuff like this.
They finna, if he win this bitch, bro, they're gonna pull out some comic book feats from fucking 1961 that nobody know about, bro.
It's this kind of reaction that both directly and indirectly disrespects comics, which then encourages viewers to make them out as power scaling fuel and not another story form. And again, it's mainly Marvel and DC comics that are like this. Other comic companies aren't like this. But that brings me to one last thing. The last thing I want to talk about is movies, as I have a mixed opinion on how they normally portray characters. They definitely do have a positive influence which does transfer over to the comics at times. I would talk about TV shows, but from what I see most of the time, they are pretty accurate to the comics. As far as positive influences go, look at Blade for example. This was his first costume in the comics, and then the movie released, and now every Blade since has used the Wesley Snipes version as the standard Blade look. Safe to say, I prefer this look for Blade, and glad they didn't go with an at the time comic accurate look. But at the same time, they can miss important details that don't make it faithful to how the character has been portrayed for years. Like for example, did you know that Hulk has dissociative identity disorder, which is why the Hulk personality exists? Because the Hulk is a personification of his anger he felt as a child because of his abusive father. I don't remember that part being said in any movie, except maybe one storyline in the She-Hulk show. Also, fun fact, Black Widow and Hawkeye weren't a part of the founding Avengers. They took the place of Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, who were Ant-Man and the Wasp, or Zack Snyder's Superman. Enough said. That doesn't make the films bad to enjoy, and I do enjoy them. but just poor portrayals of the characters. But as seen earlier, comic accuracy isn't always needed and sometimes should be ignored, like when a character does some weird shit that should never have been published. Hal Jordan fans, you know what I'm talking about. And there are some great comic movies that are perfect portrayals of the characters. Batman the Killing Joke, most of the DCAMU, the new Fantastic Four, and Superman movies are all amazing. Overall, comics need more respect and people need to give them a chance. And if you don't, that's cool, just don't disrespect the medium.